Reading is a fundamental building block of learning, not just for school, but for life itself. Reading makes you better informed and have good understanding of life. Time for Readers for Growth. I am Busola Faiga, and with me on the program today, I have Peace Martin David,
Thank you, ma.
Divine Isibwa. It's
Thank
nice
you.
having you. Jessica Akintonde,
Thank you.
welcome onto the program. On the program this week, we are highly honored to have someone who is addressed as an Amazon, a fashionista, a seasoned broadcast journalist, a face that raises television most times, most especially on the network news. I'm talking of Seun Olagunju. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Ma, when is someone qualified to be called an ace broadcaster?
Well, someone can be called an ace broadcaster when they've spent so many years in the profession. If somebody has made it their career, if they've built a career, a profession out of being a broadcaster. Some people find themselves in broadcasting, in journalism, just by accident, or they just do it temporarily to while away time and then leave and start to do something else. But people who are ace broadcasters are people who started maybe from the scratch, from the lowest rung, and then build their careers up to the height of it. So those ones can be qualified to be, those ones are qualified to be called ace journalists because they have, and broadcasters, because they have dedicated their entire lives, their entire working lives and careers to broadcasting.
Thank you, ma.
Ma, do journalists read a lot?
Oh yes, journalists have to read a lot. And the reason is that a journalist has to be versatile. Versatility means that you have to know a bit of everything. Because if you want to ask someone questions about something, you have to at least know something about that thing. That doesn't mean that a journalist is a jack of all trades. That doesn't mean you have to have in-depth or very deep knowledge about everything. But what it means is that whatever topic that you have been assigned to go and cover or to go and find out something about, you need to, even if you didn't know anything about it, before you go to meet the person you are interviewing, you have to read about that subject to have an idea of even the questions that you're going to ask so that you don't ask stupid questions. Questions that will make you look stupid when you ask and somebody will say, are you sure you're a journalist? So that's why journalists need to read a lot to be up to date about a lot of information about things happening around them, because we are the ones that inform the people too. So if we want to inform the people, we have to be well informed ourselves.
Thank you, ma. Ma, how do you encourage your children to read?
Well, well, you know, reading has moved these days from only hard copies to a lot of soft copy. What I mean by that is that people read a lot from the telephone, from the internet, from the computers. A lot of people don't read books again. So if it's reading in that sense, yes, they read a lot because they have to do. In fact, many of the assignments they bring back from school now are computer-based. They do their assignments doing research on the internet, and they have to read. But then I still encourage them to read a lot of books, because what you would find in some books, you would not find on the internet. You may not find on the internet. If you want to find them on the internet, you may have to search a lot of volume before you can find exactly what you will find. For example, in a book like this, if I have to search, if the book does not have an e-copy, then it will be difficult for a child to find out what he wants to know from this kind of book on the net. And another thing is to encourage the reading culture, because sometimes reading is not only about just picking a book and then going through the words in it. Reading is about knowledge, gaining knowledge, having the patience to sit down and go through a whole lot of books, and then, or a whole book, and then getting the right information, what you actually really need. It requires a lot of patience, and then you also gain a lot from it. So yes, I encourage my children to read a lot.
Thank you, ma.
Yeah.
Ma, do you still find time to read? If yes, what do you read?
Oh yes, I read a lot as well because I found myself in fields that I'm not familiar with or that I wasn't familiar with. First of all, I found myself heading a business department and I wasn't familiar with that, so I had to read a lot to get to know a lot of things about that. And then I found myself in the power sector again, which I didn't know anything about as well, except that when the light goes off and it comes on. So I just had to read a lot as well, and still have to read because the world is dynamic. Dynamic means things change a lot. What was about a year or two ago is not what is today, especially because of technology. Things change a lot. So if you don't read, you cannot be up to date with information.
Please, ma, advise our mates at home about reading.
Okay, children at home, I would like to implore you to always find time to read. I know that this is internet age, this is the age of technology, this is the age of social media, but then we have to be able to read to, you have to be able to read to get some of the advantages of reading books. What we find these days on the social media, on the internet, is a lot of people who can't even write sentences without abbreviating three-quarters of it. People will send you things on WhatsApp, and especially children and young adults, and I find it hard to read it. So I said, why do children of nowadays not know how to write? And the basic problem is from not reading. Many people send text messages and send it shorthand, which means they've abbreviated a lot of things. Many people want to post things on the social media and then they've abbreviated a lot of things. I believe that if you read books, you cannot find books that words have been abbreviated in it, except maybe some places, and maybe it's deliberate to raise a point. So if you read books, you will improve your vocabulary. It will give, once your vocabulary is improved and once you're able to construct sentences confidently, it boosts your confidence to be able to talk to your friends. It boosts your confidence to be able to relate with your peers. So reading is very good. And then the more important of it, you gain more knowledge. I was raised in this country, but I was able to read books about what happened all over the world. And I had an idea of what it was out there even before I had the opportunity to travel around. So you have a broad knowledge of what is going on elsewhere. You have a broad knowledge of other subjects, because in any book you find authors talking about some subjects. Some will talk about science, some will talk about the arts, some will talk about, things that you normally would not pick interesting to go and read. But if you take like a novel, if you try to read a novel a day or a week, depending on, so that it doesn't affect your schoolwork, you will find out that you also gain a lot of insight into the world around you. So children at home, I want to encourage you to always read. It's very good. The advantages are so many.
Thank you, ma.
You're welcome.
Ma, what advice do you have for parents, teachers, and government about reading culture?
Okay, I would like to advise teachers I said earlier that these days what you find is that some assignments, or many of the assignments, teachers would tell children to go and Google it and go and find out from the internet and things like that. When we were growing up, we didn't have access to any internet. In fact, we didn't have access to telephones. We just had to go to the libraries to read. And the libraries are disappearing. We don't have libraries, don't have public libraries. Again, schools hardly have libraries. You just see people telling children to go and meet your parents, collect your parents' iPad, or go on your parents' computers to go and research something. No. Schools should bring back the libraries, the physical libraries, not even e-libraries this time. Bring back the physical libraries so that children who have access to the e-libraries or to the internet can also have access to the hard copies. Go to the, when I was young, I went to, one of the primary schools I went to was a public school. It was owned by a local government. And I remember that in that local government, the missionaries came there and built a library, public library, and we would leave our schools and we would go there and sign for books. We would go and read and then return to the libraries. And it was competition. You would want to compete. We would compete with our friends to say, oh, I have read so and so. Have you read it? And then that person, if they had not, would run to the library the next day and go and get that. And then we would discuss. That helped us to broaden our horizons as children who were in a community who many of us had probably not left that community, but we had an idea of what the world or even the country was like. We read books about other parts of the country, about other cultures, about other parts of the world. So I want to encourage the government to bring back these public libraries. They help a lot. Some children, not that they don't want to read, but their parents can't afford books. And that's the reality. Books don't come cheap. Especially the hard copies. Even the e-copies, you have to pay for some of them. So the government and schools need to bring back libraries that children who are willing to read but do not have access to books can go and get books that they can read.
Thank you, Ma.
You're welcome there.
Ma, are we just to read our school books, pass, get out of school? Would that be the end of reading?
No, no. In fact, that's just a minute part of reading. And I would like to give you an example. I remember when I was growing up, my grandmother used to encourage me to read Yoruba books. And I didn't understand why she would want me to read Yoruba books when I was going to school and they were teaching me in English. But she always bought Yoruba novels for me while my mom would buy me English storybooks and novels. It was when I now got into secondary school and one Nigerian language became compulsory. You had to pass, and I had to take Yoruba, which was my language and the one I was more comfortable with. It was the knowledge from reading all those Yoruba books that helped me with passing Yoruba grammar and other topics in Yoruba. So I was able to relate my reading Yoruba novels. So it is not about just reading your school books. It is about reading generally. Like I said earlier, reading broadens your horizon. It boosts your imagination. You can sit down here and read this book and you would have traveled to this place that you have never been before, which the author has described in this book. Do you understand that? You can read a book and the book will take you, like Alice in Wonderland, if you have ever read that, the author would take you to places that you would wonder that, oh, does this kind of place really exist? You would read some books and it would describe in detail to you how the streets of Kano look like. And maybe you've never been there. You'd read some books and it would describe to you how the streets of Lagos are. And maybe you've never been to Lagos. And that would make your imagination sharp. So that the day you would be taken to Lagos or to Kano, you would like, oh, yes, this is what I read in that book. Oh, this is what it was. So that's how it is not only about school books. In fact, reading outside of school books helps you to read your school books. Reading school books can be very boring and difficult, I tell you, but you don't have a choice, you have to read it. But if you read a novel and you know that, okay, I enjoyed reading this, maybe by relaxing and that you are encouraged to pick your school book and think, oh, this is not so difficult after all. After all, it's also a book. So please, it's not only about reading school books to pass. That's not it. Reading school books to pass is very important, but it is also important for you to read outside school books. Read widely so that you can gain more knowledge about the world and the surroundings around. It even helps you to choose the kind of profession you want. Because if you have read a book about a doctor who has been very nice to patients and, oh, this doctor, everybody loves him, you want to be a doctor. Maybe if you've read a book and the subject is a musician who has attained stardom from whatever it is, you want to be encouraged to be like that person. So it can also even help you to choose a career if you read widely as well. we all have a book with us. The title of this book is City Boy, and the author is Olagunju. We're going to read chapter 1. Olorupo was a small town, and its inhabitants could be found in the major Nigerian cities. Alaba was well known throughout the length and breadth of the town. He was called Saji by his friends, while those younger than him called him Brother Saji. The children called him Baba Saji. Many people did not know his real name. If you asked anyone in Olorupo for the house of Saji, you would be directed there without difficulty. His house was located around the market at the back of the palace. Few houses were roofed with corrugated iron sheets several decades ago, when Alaba himself was a very young kid. He told those who cared to listen to the story of the day his father's house was roofed with pieces of corrugated iron sheeting, and how half of the people of Olorupo gathered to honor him. Saji added an extension to the house. There, he entertained important visitors. This extension was built with cement blocks, plastered, and painted in green and yellow colors. We are not rich in the family, but I am proud to say that we embrace anything that would add to the comfort of our family members, he often told his children and relations. Saji's first wife died several years ago. He was still in the army when the sad incident occurred. It was rumored that he left the army because of this and returned to Olorupo to live the rest of his life as a farmer and petty trader dealing in cement. He later married a young lady called Segilade from one of the aristocratic families. Segilade was of average height, fair in complexion with 3 tribal marks, which looked as if she was born with them. She was beautiful, charming, shy, and very respectful. Segilade's first 2 children died, and it was generally believed that the children were abiku, children born to die young. When the last baby died at the age of 2, a deep cut was inflicted on one of the toes on his right foot. When Segilade had the third child, a conspicuous mark was noticeable on the child's last toe on the right foot. This made the family to conclude that the new baby was the same child that died at the age of 2. The child was born very close to the new year. He was named Abiodun Mirayesa Alaba. The middle name means that he would no longer run away from the world. It was believed that the baby would abandon his group, Abiku, and live a normal life. Truly, he did not show some of the traits associated with the earlier 2 children of Segilade. Abiodun grew up like other children in the town. He followed his parents to the farm and helped them. His father had 2 children from his first marriage. They were adults now. They were Akinde and Yewande. Yewande was married and lived in Lagos, while Akinde lived in Ibadan with his wife and children too. The 2 visited home occasionally and brought gifts for Abiodun. They would have liked to take him away to live with them, but the parents were not keen on this. Abiodun knew the nooks and crannies of Olorupo, and he had friends in most of them. He had heard interesting stories about big cities, especially Lagos and Ibadan. He looked forward to the day he would leave Olorupo and be a city dweller like his big brother and sister. Whenever he talked about them, he spoke of my big brother at Ibadan, Akinde, and my big sister in Lagos, Yewande. Abiodun enrolled in the oldest primary school in the town and enjoyed his time at school, especially the storytelling sessions. He was also lucky to have a relation called Ajike who told the children stories at home in the moonlight. Thus, whenever Abiodun was called to tell stories in the class, he usually remembered one story or the other, once told by his aunt, Ajike. The moon shone brightly in the sky. Abiodun finished his supper and saw Aunt Ajike with some of the children. He knew they were going to be told stories and was eager to join them. In the twinkling of an eye, he joined them, and all of them looked at Aunt Ajike's face. Ajike was an accomplished storyteller. She could tell stories of animals and the things they did as if they were human beings. One would think that she was there when all those things happened. She would tell the stories in such a way that all the children believed that the animals once lived like good neighbors, talked to each other like human beings, discussed issues, celebrated, and gave judgment on things that required this. Whenever Ajike was around to tell stories, the children were all ears. Abiodun enjoyed the songs injected into the stories and the chorus which the children echoed with enthusiasm and joy. The children were looking at Auntie Ajike's face when Baba Saji emerged and sat with them. Ajike told her first story and then children enjoyed it. When she finished, the children wanted more stories. Please, give us one more story before we go to bed, she told. Please, give us one more story before we go to bed, said Tolu, one of the children. You want more stories? Asked Ajike. Yes, Auntie, the children said in unison. I will tell Baba Saji to give us one story, since he is here with us and enjoys our company tonight, said Ajike. Yes, we want a story from Baba Saji, said Adenle, the youngest of the children. Auntie, please pardon me for what I want to say now. Can I ask a question? Asked Bimbo. Yes, you can, replied Ajike. I know Baba is called Saji. Is this part of your name, sir? Alaba laughed so much that water came out of his eyes. You want to know why people call me Saji? Yes, all the children answered in excitement. I will tell you today why I'm called Saji and do more. I will tell you a beautiful story, but this may be different from the stories from Ajike. Go ahead, sir. We want it, said Bolanle, one of the children. Okay, my children. I took the nickname Saji because of my link with the Nigerian army as a soldier. I enlisted in the army and spent 25 years. I was trained as a soldier and I saw action in Tivland. I fought in Boni. My unit captured Port Harcourt during the Civil War under the leadership of Colonel Benjamin Adekunle. I rose to the rank of a sergeant. If I had stayed longer in the army, maybe I would have risen higher in rank. If I had more education, my progress in the army would have been faster too. So, face your education very well. My rank was sergeant and people abbreviated or corrupted it to Saji. This is easy to pronounce. It is musical, short, and easy to remember. I returned to Oloropo after the death of my first wife. My late wife, Ifeola, kept the home front while I fought for the glory and unity of my country. Even though I left the army over 15 years ago, the name Saji has stuck with me. Even though I left the army over 15 years ago, the name Saji has stuck to me. Our people here call me Saji. Friends call me Saji, the soldier. My juniors call me Brother Saji. And you children call me Baba Saji. I enjoy every bit of this, he said. Rain started in a drizzle and everybody went inside the house. It later came down in torrents. Baba Saji was still ready to tell his own story, but the sound of the rain would make the storytelling inaudible. Can we have our story tomorrow? Ajike asked Baba Saji. Yes, you can. I promise I will come. I have told you the origin of my name, Saji. Once a soldier, always a soldier. I am still a soldier at heart. Tomorrow, I will tell you real life stories, not about animals, but about men and women, what they did to each other, how they lost their senses during a period, and how they came back to realize that nothing is as good as peace among the peoples of the world. I pray that rain will not disturb tomorrow. We can then have our story in peace and comfort, said Baba Saji. Thank you, sir. We will gather under the tree in front of the house tomorrow to listen to your story, said Ajike. The children dispersed to their mother's rooms. The rain came down heavily again. The sound of the rain filled the air. There were sounds of thunder here and there. The sounds became so loud that children ran for safety wherever they were. Abiodun had spread a mat in his mother's room where he used to sleep. He covered his body with a cover cloth and was full of fear as the sound of thunder shook the building. The rain fell for a couple of hours, and within a short time, most of the people in the house were soundly asleep. So we read a story about Baba Saji in this novel, The City Boy. So what is the real name of Baba Saji?
Baba Saji's real name is Alaba.
Baba. Okay. What was Baba Saji's profession before he came back to the Olorunpo village?
His profession was that he was a soldier.
He was a soldier. Very good. That means you were attentive. Now, how many children did Baba Saji's late wife have for him?
She had 2 children.
She had 2 children. That's very good of you. That means you were attentive all through the thing. So clap for yourselves, children.
Ma, on behalf of the children of Readers for Growth, we present you this.
Oh. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, we have to go. That's how we'll wrap up today's edition of the program Readers for Growth. A big thank you to our guests. I'm sure the kids have learnt a lot from her today. Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
And big thank you to Seun Olagunju for being part of today's program. I'm sure when we call on her next time, she'll oblige us. Wouldn't you love to have her on the program again?
Yes, ma'am.
A big thank you to you, Peace Martin David,
Thank you, ma'am.
Divine Isibwa,
Thank you, ma'am.
Jessica Akintomde. Thanks for coming on to the program. I'm Busola Faiga Okweolu. Read today, lead tomorrow.